The birds are back. We're starting to hear them in the morning. And so to me, all of this is very symbolic, and it just reminds me of our triumphant, the life force that is flowing through all of us, how triumphant it is, how it comes back every year, and our triumphant spirits. And so also in spring we celebrate Easter, the resurrection from death, the immortality of spirit. And so during spring, we are given an invitation to start over, to begin again. And so that's what I want to start with today, is asking ourselves, what is coming alive in me? What's already alive in me? And how do I know what the answer to those questions are? How do I find out? So I want to talk first about listening to your heart. It could also be, like having a gut feeling. It's sort of the same thing. If you can listen to your heart, it's like a compass, and it will tell you if you're pointed in the right direction or if you are going the wrong way, if you need to make a U-turn. And sometimes we don't really want to know that information, because that might mean that we have to make choices, and sometimes choices lead to changes. And so just, if you can, when you're thinking about these kind of things, like what's alive in me, what's coming to life in me, what's budding in me this spring, try to bypass your mind and just delve into your heart. And as you're pondering, just let whatever is budding or coming to life in you just come to the surface, just like, a seed would crack and break through and come to the surface, up into the light. Just be willing. Just open your heart and be willing to follow where it leads as you're listening and just as you go throughout your day today. And I don't know if you know this, but other people may not care or bless or appreciate what you're doing when you're trying to follow your heart. And so that's okay. We just need to shrug off that skepticism and trust the wisdom of Christ that is within each of us. And when we are able to tune in and do that, then we can discover what is really important to us and what is alive in us. And so I want you to take a little peek in your bulletin, if you haven't already, at the comic strip, the Calvin and Hobbes comic strip. I just love this one. I just feel like it describes me so perfectly. I am Calvin in this comic strip. And so he's asking, what's the point of human existence? Because she's teaching him math or whatever, and he's like, well, what is the point of human existence? And she doesn't want to go there, and he's like, well, I don't really want to waste my time on this if this isn't important to the grand scheme of things. And that is exactly how I feel all the time about stuff. And so it's true, we want to know what is the bigger meaning. You don't just want to aimlessly wander through your life fulfilling obligations and doing stuff because everybody else does it. Many of us are here today because we are like Calvin. We want to know the deeper meaning. So there's this quote from Peggy O'Mara, who is the editor of Mothering Magazine, and she wrote a book. And one of the quotes from her book is, "All that is really important is invisible: love, God, and air." And I love that quote, and I think that it's true, that we are all here today because we have an interest or we've been called to take note of the invisible things in life, like love and God and air and unity and all those invisible things. So even just this morning, we've turned our phones off, we've got off Facebook, and we're not, there's no media blaring at us, there's no obligations right now. We're just all here in our chairs, and we've answered a much fainter call, which is to tend to and nurture the stuff in our lives that is invisible. And we do that because we want to have a deeper connection with our friends, with each other, with our children, with nature, with God. So how do we get there? How do I make my everyday meaningful? How can we live in a state of trust and insight instead of being clouded by fear and anxiety and resentment? So I have a few ideas, and just like in the 12-step meetings, you can take what you like and leave the rest. But my first suggestion is just to be quiet sometimes and listen to the voice of Spirit and make your own deep observations. And you don't have to read countless books and blogs and videos and everything else. Just be quiet and listen to your own wisdom. And I do think that wisdom starts with wonder. You begin just wondering and opening your mind, opening your heart, and that's where you start. And another suggestion I have is just to celebrate life. Sometimes we tend to be so focused on being efficient and getting things done and being productive, and we forget sometimes to indulge in some of the pleasures of life that may be inconvenient or messy, stuff like baking a cake with a small child, or staying up late to watch fireworks, or watching the sunrise, or playing with finger paints, making a mud pie outside. Those, if you can imagine, a moment of pure joy, fully lived, we all know that is more valuable and more precious than, a lost hour of sleep, or keeping your shoes dry, or that the cake turns out perfectly, or whatever. Another suggestion I have is to just tend to the details of life, especially the domestic stuff that we tend to label less important than the other work, like packing lunches, mopping floors, and folding laundry, and all of that stuff that seems very mundane. If we can bring to those things the same attention and care that we do to some of the things that we consider more important, I think that is a way to open up a path to the spiritual side of life. Because I think that our whole relationship to truth, to our spiritual life, to each other, to the world, it's all kind of wrapped up in our gestures and our simple actions that we take on a day-to-day basis. I can't remember who said it, but somebody said how we spend our days is how we spend our lives. And it's true, like the day-to-day stuff, if we can infuse a little bit of love or a little bit of care into those things, they can be elevated to even a holy task or a sacred task when they've been sort of saturated with meaning and love, because you're not just doing it because it's the next thing on your to-do list. So you're doing it because you know why you're doing it. You know the purpose behind it. And so the last suggestion I have is to find a pathway into prayer. It can be however you want. Really, it's just a simple moment with God, a holy moment when you're trusting something that is greater than you, greater than your own human endeavors, greater than your human concerns, just surrendering. And this book is Anne of Green Gables. Anybody an Anne of Green Gables fan? That's one of the cool things about homeschooling is I get to read all these books and literature and stuff that I normally would never let myself read because it would seem indulgent. But Anne of Green Gables is a great series. Anyway, for those of you who don't know, Anne is an orphan, and she is sent to live with this woman named Marilla, who is very, her lips are always pursed and her hair is always pulled really tightly back, and she's very strict and serious. And Anne is very bright, and she's a young child. So Marilla has just found out that Anne, I'm going to read you a little excerpt. She doesn't know how to properly say her prayers. And Marilla has just found out about this and just come to live with her, and it's unacceptable, obviously. So so this is what happens. Anne, let's see, where is this in my book? Oh, well, I'll just read it off here. Anne knelt at Marilla's knee and looked up gravely. Oh, yeah, you must kneel down, said Marilla in embarrassment. Anne knelt at Marilla's knee and looked up gravely. Why must people kneel down to pray? If I really wanted to pray, I'll tell you what I'd do. I'd go out into a great big field all alone, or into the deep, deep woods, and I'd look up into the sky, up, up, up into that lovely blue sky that looks as if there was no end to its blueness. And then I'd just feel a prayer. Well, I'm ready. What am I to say? So she is praying, I just think you can pray however you like. And she was waiting there for Marilla to tell her what to say next, but I feel like what she just said was the prayer, So just find a way into prayer. It doesn't have to be kneeling, although sometimes that's appropriate. Sometimes you feel, power when you're on your knees, but praying is not just getting on your knees and begging. It can be walking in a great big field looking at the sky too. So there is another book called Simple Abundance, and it's written by Sarah Van Brennich, I think is how you say her name. But she writes about the ancient Greeks and how they used to describe time as having a twin nature. And one twin is Chronos and one is Kairos. And so she describes Chronos as like clocks, deadlines, calendars, agendas, notifications, reminders, schedules, all that kind of thing. And it's keeping track. And it's the world's time. It's the time that we operate on a daily basis. Kairos is the other twin, and it is transcendence, infinity, reverence, joy, passion, love of the sacred. She uses the example, Kairos is a Schubert waltz in 19th century Vienna with your soulmate, which, it's like, yes. So Kairos is spirit's time. So we exist in Chronos, but we long for Kairos. So in our complex lives, where does spirit live? Where does it flourish? How can we exist in Kairos instead? She writes, maybe we think we've never known Kairos, but we have. When meditating or praying, when lost in music's rapture or literature's reverie, when planting bulbs or pulling weeds, when watching over a sleeping child, when reading the Sunday comics together in bed, when delighting in a sunset, we know joy, we glimpse beauty, we remember what it means to be alive, we reconnect with our divinity. In the movie Dead Poets Society, which is a great movie. If you haven't seen it, you should go watch that this afternoon. But there's Mr. Keating is the main character. He's played by Robin Williams, and he's a teacher at a boys' school, and it's also kind of a strict, by the book sort of school, and everybody stays in line. And he is sort of an unconventional teacher, and he talks a lot about following your heart and things like that. And a quote from the movie that I love is, "Medicine, law, business, engineering, these are all noble pursuits and necessary to sustain life. But poetry, beauty, romance, love, these are what we stay alive for." So how do we exchange chronos for kairos? By slowing down, by concentrating on one thing at a time, by making time, by taking time. And it really does only take a moment to cross over from chronos into kairos, but it does take a moment. And for me, it looks like plopping myself down in a lawn chair in the backyard, staring at the sky, watching Ellie, my daughter Ellie, play in the mud through the kitchen window. She's got like a little mud kitchen area, and she just loves it. She has taken over back there, and I just love it. I just watch her. She talks to herself and just is out there, and she's lost in time. She has no idea what time it is. She has no idea how long she's been out there, and I just admire that and love that. We have a ton of birds in our backyard, cardinals and blue jays and squirrels and all kinds of stuff. I love feeding them and watching them through the window. On Tuesdays, Ellie and I have started poetry tea time, which is where we drink tea and read poetry. And we've been doing it most Tuesdays, and it's become a little ritual that we love. And for me, in those moments, that's when I get kind of lost in time also. I'm not thinking about, well, what's coming next, because it's just so enjoyable. I'm in the moment. And obviously singing, playing the piano, music in all its forms usually moves me. Dancing, letting my kids put face paint on me, dressing up like, in costumes, all that silly stuff. Going for a leisurely walk with a friend and her dog. Listening to the kids laugh together. Jeremy and I, sometimes we do, I don't know what you call it, when we snuggle, we get like completely smushed to where all limbs are wrapped up, and it's like a little cocoon of love, and I love that. We sometimes doing yoga, I'll feel it. Or meditating or praying. AJ, sometimes my son, will just stop what he's doing and just stop and give me like this knowing stare, or like, it's just, there are moments, and usually they are not planned, although sometimes they are, when you sort of transcend. Holding a brand new baby is another time when, not very many people can argue that spirit is not present in those moments, because you feel it, you know it. I also put in silence, but I don't really know if that's true, because I haven't heard any silence in many years, but maybe some of you know. So anyway, what is coming to life inside of you? Albert Einstein says there's only two ways to live your life. One as though nothing is a miracle, one as though everything is a miracle. So I think that Albert and Sarah are sort of talking about the same thing. It's what you're looking for in the experience, what you're bringing to the experience. So we're talking about, I just gave you all these examples of my kids, and I do think it's important to note, a lot of my spiritual growth has happened since the birth of my children. And I really do think that they're like little messengers sent from the beyond to make me question everything I know and all my beliefs and all my questions, all the deep stuff, because they ask, Ellie asks me all kinds of questions. Why did God make mosquitoes? Where does the sky end? And, did God choose you to be my parents and stuff like that? And it's like, those questions haunt me because I don't know all the answers. It's very challenging, but I think it is enough to just wonder with her, to just be in awe with her and marvel at the mystery of it all. So anyway, mothering, being a mother, being a parent is a spiritual journey. It is a process of learning. And just as, my children grow, I'm growing inwardly as I'm, going through all of this. But when I see them engaging with the world, I see the light in their eyes, I am reminded that it is not my job to ingrain in them a certain religious doctrine or a certain way of being or believing, but that my job is to just give them a place where their own souls can spread out and bloom and blossom, a safe, loving place. And sometimes as adults, we feel uncertain, about all kinds of things. We long for connection to something larger than ourselves. But children are just are naturally spiritual beings, and they are so joyful and inventive. They wonder about everything. They're full of faith. And so in order to join them, which is what we need to do, we have to rediscover what's important and what's meaningful in our own lives. And that's what we're talking about today. So we have to pay attention. When we are living in a way that's consistent with what we believe and our ideals, our values, then we really do give children a gift. Our own children certainly, but all children, because we bring spirit or spirituality into real life, into here and now. And we are teaching them that their gestures and their actions and their words are actual expressions of their soul and spirit. And so having that awareness that our words and our actions do matter, that we are a part of something greater, it seems like it's in the small things, the small little wonders of life, daily life, that sometimes are what gives rise to the bigger questions that I get. Like if you see a flower growing up through the cement, that's sort of a bridge between the spiritual world and the material world. It's like our brief moment here in time and the huge expanse of space, the vastness of life. It's sort of right there in the little flower poking through. So you are meant to live an amazing life, a really wonderful life, even if you are in the midst of something terrifying or scary. You can have a life that is rich in meaning and connection, even now. We all can, if we return back to the person we were meant to be, if we turn back to listening to our hearts. And Christina Baldwin is an author of a book about journaling. I don't remember the title, but she says, spirituality is the sacred center out of which all life comes, including Mondays and Tuesdays and rainy Saturday afternoons in all their mundane and glorious detail. The spiritual journey is the soul's life commingling with ordinary life. So open up your life, make room for spirit in the midst of your family life, your domestic chores, your work, your obligations. Because if not now, then when? We say, someday I'll be happy. Someday, when I'm rich, then I'll feel more free. When I find the right person, then I will know love, true love. I'll be loving and real and genuine and truthful then, And, but we have to remember, well, I invite you to remember the story of Jesus and the rich young merchant who approaches him after his Sermon on the Mount, and he admires Jesus, and he's really touched by what he says, and he wants to join him. And so he asks with, he's very sincere when he asks, and he says he asks what he needs to do, what arrangements need to be made. And Jesus opens his arms and says, "Come with me now. Drop everything and come." And the young merchant, he starts blubbering and he says, "Yes, but I can't leave my business so fast, and I have to tell somebody I'm going, and I have to get some clothes, and how much money do I need?" and all that stuff. And with open arms, Jesus says again, "Come with me now." And how often do we do this? We put off love, we put off joy and God and truth because of all of our yes, but. And it's hard, but it's simple. The only thing we have to do is drop everything and come now. So I just encourage you to try to devote one small part of your day to taking care of the invisible. Just be willing, listen, and pick one thing. For me, it might look like spending an hour snuggling with Ellie, inviting the kittens to join us and reading Stuart Little. Or it might be lighting a candle and giving my husband a back rub. Just being more conscious of the mood that we create in our homes and in our lives. So mundane activities can be enriched, and all of these day-to-day things offer us opportunities for connection, which is what we're really craving. And even meals, even just a meal can take on an air of festivity and celebration with just a little extra care. You can carry it out with love and attention to detail. And these are very humble moments in life, nothing special, but if you cast them in like a golden light, if you elevate them a little bit, then they can be extremely meaningful. In Song of Solomon, chapter 2, verse 10 through 13, it says, "My beloved speaks to me and says to me, 'Arise, my love, my beautiful one, and come away, for behold, the winter is past, the rain is over and gone. The flowers appear on the earth, the time of singing has come, and the voice of the turtle dove is heard in our land. The fig tree ripens its figs, and the vines are in blossom. They give forth fragrance. Arise, my love, my beautiful one, and come away.'" So we will find a way if we listen to our heart, if we live from our hearts, and through the daily application of love in our lives. And, love really does cover all. It's so much better to give the benefit of the doubt, to hope for the best, to reserve scrutiny, judgment, to imagine for a second how it is for the other person, to allow the one that you love to be who they actually are and not the version that you wish that they were or the picture that you wish they were, to give grace, to have tenderness, to be kind, to find common ground, to celebrate someone else, to choose to be content over dissatisfied or exasperated. So how can we reconnect with God with the light of Christ that shines in our hearts this spring and always? Be willing to open your heart to love and to God's guidance in all its forms. Sit quietly, rest your mind from thinking so many thoughts, and just allow your heart to open. God meets you there before you say one single word. Just drink deeply and be refreshed. I'll close with a word from Mother Teresa, which I based the title of this talk on. We must not think that our love has to be extraordinary, but we do need to love without getting tired. How does a lamp burn? Through the continuous input of small drops of oil. These drops are the small things of daily life: faithfulness, small words of kindness, a thought for others, our way of being quiet, of looking, of speaking, and of acting. They are true drops of love that keeps our lives and our relationships burning like a lively flame. So I invite you now to get comfortable and settled into your seat, and I'm going to invite Reverend BJ to come up and lead us in our meditation. Oh, thank you. Thank you.